Hi, this is Dale. I'm going to be doing this video here on things to watch for when buying a vehicle online. This is going to be a mechanical only. I'll do another one at a later date on body. So I'm going to do this in PowerPoint because I just thought still pictures might be a little bit better than to be trying to do it on an actual video of the vehicle. So we're going to get started. This is a mid-60s Ford F100, and it's got a 460 transplanted into it. According to was up for sale, and according to the ad, this came out of like a mid-70s Lincoln. I'm not going to identify this vehicle because I don't want to be picking on somebody's vehicle. There's no reason in that. I'm not going to nitpick any of this. But I'm going to kind of point out what you should be watching for when you just have pictures, maybe a short video of the vehicle. You really have a lot of clues as to the quality of the build just in those. So we're going to start here. My main thing I'm looking at in this picture is that this vehicle or this engine was pulled out of a vehicle and apparently, maybe power washed a little bit and spray painted, and they painted absolutely everything on it. I mean, if you look at it, fuel pumps been painted, underneath the distributors painted, gaskets for the valve covers have paint on them, and there's even some paint on the exhaust manifold right there, which also tells me that they probably haven't driven this much once it was transplanted. But my main concern about this is that they didn't do any inspection on the vehicle at all. I mean, on the motor at all before they put it in. And if I were doing this was my truck, I would have had this engine, I would have pulled the valve covers off, pulled the intake off, pulled the front of the engine off, or the timing cover off, and the oil pan. Then I would have replaced the rear main seal. I'd have pulled a main cap and a rod cap for two reasons. One of them would be that I wanted to see if the engine's been rebuilt and the crankshaft has been ground, and that give me the bearing sizes. The other would be for wear. Then once that was done, new pan gasket, button that up. On the front, unless it had a brand new timing chain on it, I would replace the timing chain and gears while I was there. Then, all new gaskets, seals up front. I would do a new fuel pump, a new water pump in there, and button everything up. That's how I would do it if I were going to do this. Now, what I'm looking at here is that you have no clue what this engine is. This thing could have 300,000 miles on it. Who knows? It's really hard to say. I would say this would be a great buy if the price was right and your plan was, with the purchase of it, was to pull the engine out of it, rebuild the engine and the transmission so you knew exactly what you had to start with. But if you're buying this to drive, I would just walk away. Anytime you come up to a vehicle and you see it has been painted like this, walk away from it. You do not have a clue what you're buying at all. The other thing I noticed in this picture was that the hose to the vacuum advance is missing. One of three reasons. One, laziness or forgetfulness. Secondly, not knowing that it needed to be there. And thirdly, and most likely, would be that when it's hooked up, it doesn't run right. And that would aim, for me anyway, thinking that timing chain's loose. And I don't care, if this has got 30,000 miles on it, as old as it is, considering the year that it is, it's got a nylon on the teeth of that upper gear, and it's wore out, and it needs replaced. So that would be my guess. That's why that's missing. I guess it's better to do that than would be to put the hose on there and then, put something in the hose to block it off to make people think it was hooked up. So next picture, only thing I took this picture or kept this picture for was this battery tie down, hold down It's got plumber's tape across there, and that plumber's tape I saw in another picture right here is positive post. It's about a quarter of an inch away from there. So as you can see, it's not tight. So it's just a matter of time. In fact, those bolts seem to be kind of angled towards the front of the vehicle. It's just a matter of time till that rocks back, hits that positive post and grounds out. Now, with any luck, this might serve as a giant fuse and burn in half, but with most people's luck, including mine, that would just go up in flames. You know, electrical fires are just instant on and really hard to extinguish. So that is a huge problem right there. That would need to be repaired before you even ever drove it. Be better off just to take it off, leave it off, than to have what's there. And then on to the next one, we're going to stay with electrical. The original fuse box right here. This side is hot all the time. It comes off of the solenoid that's back here and comes down and hooks into here. And then you can see somebody put this Ooga horn on here. We'll look at another picture here that this engine could easily become unbolted and rock over and hit that horn and push it over into that. Could be too, you know, not likely, but if the horn came loose, falling against that, or in a car accident, getting against that, and you'd have some pretty big flames. This is not necessarily that big of a deal, but it kind of shows you the quality, the workmanship on the vehicle. This vacuum hose here goes to the choke pull-off, and it appears that it's going down to direct vacuum. It should be through this thermal valve right here. The thermal valve should have direct vacuum going into it, and then this hose from the choke pull-off should go into it, and then when it reaches a certain temperature, it'll turn the vacuum on to the choke pull-off. So you know, those little things like that, when they add up in labor and time, you know, time consumed to do that. There's probably no parts involved. I'm sure that thing probably that valve probably still works. But just things to look at. And the biggest thing is, you know, I say quality of workmanship there. I'm going to leave everything else alone here. We could nitpick this for an hour, but we're not going to. Here we've got a picture of the exhaust that's routed incorrectly. That exhaust should have been on the lower side of this cross member going through this little, you know, this little notch here. It looks to me like whoever did it didn't realize which way that bend went, and they put it up here at the top. Now, the first thing you can see in this picture is the speedometer cable. They've got it just tight, trying to keep it away from the exhaust, which is just barely. And in the description, they said they just replaced this cable, and I can see why. And then they got it held down with a wire tie and a little piece of hose there. Also, not seen in this picture really, but right there, you can kind of make it out, is the fuel line. The fuel line is right up against that exhaust pipe as well, and that creates huge problems. So if persons purchasing this would need to redo that and get that exhaust put down here where it belongs, so you wouldn't have those issues. You can also see on the rear output seal, there's a big drip right there coming off. I don't know what these orange lines or cables or whatever they are. I didn't follow them out. Next picture, we have the lines for the transmission cooler. Now it looks like they used the original Lincoln lines, and everything has just got a ton of bends in it, and it appears, even in some other pictures I looked at, that these lines, at least one of them, is against the exhaust. This would be a simple repair to do. Just, you know, you go to your local parts store and get some line that is easily bendable, and that would be the seamless kind, and put them in. Probably, you know, 30 bucks worth of line and a couple hours of labor, and you could get rid of this mess. But if you follow this up, it's rubbing against the engine cradle, and we've got it tied together here with a wire tie, another wire tie up here. And one of the things that I see too is they put this piece of hose in, and it's just evidently a union, because you can see there's metal Then they did a piece of hose, which appears to be rubbing against this cross member. Then there's metal up here, so somewhere back here is tied back into the metal again. So, you know, I say not an expensive thing, but this is a for sure failure in the near future. I'm going to leave this alone and move on to the next picture because we got a better picture of that later. Again, this is the lines and just the big mess that they are. Engine cradle looks to me like it's doing its job. You know, I could nitpick it apart, but I'm not going to. It looks to me like you know, it'll work. The cable for the power to the starter, although it's not hot except for when the solenoid's actuated, it is routed down around the exhaust here. It really probably should have been up behind this motor mount and then up to the top. You can see that we got a rear main leak is what it appears to be. There's a lot of saturation further back. You can see where they wiped it down for the pictures evidently. But definitely, I'm pretty sure rear main seal, and there's no way you're going to get that oil pan off without pulling the engine. At least up out of the cradle, probably all the way out would be a lot easier to do. Okay, we're over here on this side. Remember I told you, kind of thought the engine could, even if it didn't break the motor mount, it could rock up over there and hit that horn. That's because this bolt appears to be loose. You can see it's been working up and down in this mount here. You know, no big deal other than, again, quality workmanship. And the people who are selling this really don't care. Brake lines, I kind of blew this picture up in another format and looked at this, and it really appears that this line is crimped. This is coming down from the master cylinder and across to the right front. Now, you know, we're looking at pressure over volume, so it definitely would actuate the front brake, but the signal could be slowed down a little bit by that crimp. I'd be a little concerned about that. The other thing is it's wire tied together here, and it really should have some kind of a mount on the frame over the top of that line to hold it in place. There's one other thing. This is a vent hose from the carburetor, and it should be going to a carbon canister. There's other ways to deal with that, but leaving it wide open to atmosphere is not one of the ways to do that. The other thing is it's really close to exhaust there as well, so that would need to be dealt with. All right. Here's a good picture of this. There's the fuel line back there, right up against that exhaust, and we've already covered that. So next thing is the oil pan on the transmission. It appears to be leaking. There was a couple other pictures. There were some drips on the bolts, and it looks like transmission fluid. And it looks like the modulator valve's been leaking as well there. I mean, this could be blowback from the rear main seal leaking, but I'm thinking it's probably transmission. And whenever you're buying, you got to look at worst case scenarios. So, and you know, this is what you're looking at. The U-joint there looks good, and I really like how the fact that the cross member is bolted in on top of the frame there. That's a good sign there. All right, just two things here. Most of the rubber that I'd seen in the pictures was either looked really hard or rotted like this. So, you know, most of your cab mounts, that kind of stuff need to be replaced. And, you know, if this is this bad, you probably figure the shocks are bad too. So you have to figure that into kind of an equation of what's going to cost to get this thing on the road. The other thing that kind of was funky is they double nutted this on the shackle. Not sure why. It looks like it's got a little distance between the frame and the shackle. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Probably need to be worked on, that's for sure. All right, here real quick, we got rear axle seals leaking, and this looks like it's tighter than a banjo and is hooked up here, but it's not. I saw in another picture it's not. It's just hard as a rock, this hose, and it's leaking right here. So good chance that's the original hose, need to be replaced. Here you can see it's leaking out from around the differential there on the pumpkin. And my guess is that somebody used RTV on that. RTV just over the years tends to start doing that instead of using a gasket that will last for decades. And you can't see it in this picture, but this U-joint looks pretty bad. Been over greased a lot of dry down stuff on their dirt and grease. And my guess it probably should be replaced just by looking at it. Exhaust hangers look good. I mean, it's not a clean job, but it's doable. And you can see that there's plenty of tension on emergency brakes. I'm sure that they're working okay. And I'm not going to pick on body right now, so we're not going to be looking at any of this stuff here. Overall, the body on this was pretty good. Paint was a little iffy, but the body looked really good. And my last picture. This is, I said I'm going to nitpick it, and I'm not. This is not nitpicking. This is kind of looking at overall quality of workmanship. This boot's doesn't have a retainer ring over the top of it. It's not screwed down to the floor. If you didn't, to me, if the builder didn't go to the little bit of trouble to mount that to the floor, that's the way the whole build is. And you can almost count on it that it's just been shortcut all through the entire build. The other thing looking too is if you look at the carpet, rather than doing this correctly, they apparently just cut a hole in it and slipped it down over that, and that hole's starting to grow bigger and bigger there. Just shoddy workmanship on that part. So to tell you the truth, if I got into the vehicle that I was checking out for a customer, or I personally was thinking of buying it, and I saw just this, it would probably give me about a 50% chance more of me walking away from buying it, because I say if you can't, if your build is that shoddy that you couldn't bolt this down, it's probably going to be nothing but a huge headache for either you or the person that it's hard to do it, like people do with me. So with that, I'm going to button this up. Like I said, I didn't want to pick this vehicle apart. I just want to kind of show you the big stuff. The hugest thing would be that engine, and I would say my recommendation is buy the truck really cheap. Say it was worth 20 grand. That in itself should drop it, whatever you figure it costs you to do it. If you're going to do it yourself, 3 grand on the engine and $1 grand in the transmission if you're going to build it all back stock, which, that's kind of how you got to figure your prices, because that's what you're buying. If you're going to have somebody do it, you're probably looking at 10, 12 grand to have it done. So granted, you might be able to deduct a little bit of that off of your expense factor because you're going back new and you know what you got. But anyway, that's kind of what I want to show you. It's kind of what you want to look for, in leakage and poor workmanship. And so, like I say, if you run across something that's poor workmanship in one spot, good chance you got poor workmanship all the way across the board. So I think that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much for watching my video. I know this is a little long, but we had a lot to cover there. So thanks for watching, and have a blessed day.